It is 10 a.m. I call this meeting to order. Roll call, sir. Roll call.
You sure? Okay. Commissioner Mullins. Aye. Commissioner Gallagher.
Here.
Commissioner Wilkinson.
Present.
Quorum's present.
Okay, stand as you wish for the pledge and the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we ask your presence in a meeting that we do the business of the county. We are grateful for all we've had, the great country, the great county, the great state. Be with us all individually and collectively. In Jesus' name we'll ask it. Amen.
Thank you. I'd like to amend the agenda, move the third item from the consent agenda to the third item of the regular business meeting. Okay? Second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Okay, now the consent agenda remaining is the business of the minutes of last week's regular meeting and a monthly report from the county clerk. Second.
And a second.
All in favor, aye? Aye. Thank you, and there are no table agenda items. The first question is a question about the proper burial of a person, and those people notified that it's going to be a little bit late. So when they come in, we'll come back to that item. Purchasing policy revisions and updates. Auditor's office, please. Thank you.
Amber Mondelay, Auditor's Office. Our old purchasing policy is outdated. It was a policy we adopted in 2016 off of a policy we got from the city of Farmington, which it was a great policy, but it was 27 pages and included a lot of statutes that the county didn't have to follow. So back in 2017, we revamped our policy to make it a total of 14 pages that more specifically detail out statute requirements as well as procedural requirements of the county commission. Back in 2018, the statutes changed, so we made revisions accordingly to our policy, and I would just ask, I would recommend you approve this updated policy.
I was hoping you could update some of those dollar amounts.
Well, the statute, the main one that affected us that changed was it was the rolling 90-day requirement. Before, we weren't allowed to spend more than $4,500 with a single vendor in a rolling 90-day period. That was increased to $6,000, as well as the sole source provider statute was $4,500 as well, and that was increased to $6,000.
I noticed it didn't talk about the $75,000 on prevailing wage, the new law on that.
That is changed in here as well.
Did it change the dollar amount?
Yes, it was under the competitive bidding price,
Okay.
or under the competitive bidding process under purchasing,
Okay.
where it talked about what was required if it was over $75,000.
Yes, go ahead.
If I can ask, and I hope I'm saying this right, there are multiple entities, say different departments or different offices that would maybe access the same vendor, and that was where it was really running into trouble too, wasn't it?
Correct.
And so this will just increase that by 1,500?
Well, right, we've already been following the policy and updating by our updated statutes. Back in end of 2017, beginning of 2018, we implemented a policy that if a purchase was over $500, that the department was required to get quotes. Therefore, doing the research to make sure they're getting the lowest and best price up front. So if we did reach that $6,000 threshold, we had at least done our due diligence to make sure we were getting the proper pricing.
Yeah, it can happen without even other.
It does. We monitor that on a monthly basis in the auditor's office. We do a report. I mean, technically, we should probably do it every day since it's a rolling 90-day period, but monthly is a lot more.
I never used the phrase rolling 90 days, and I like that. That's a better way of saying that, so thank you for that. Do I have a motion?
I move that we accept and adopt the purchase policy as presented by the auditor.
I will second. Okay, now, any questions?
I do.
Yes.
I know in the past, through the auditor's office and through the commission, you have printed up a quick guide to make sure that you are, and we utilize this a lot to make sure we are staying in compliance with our purchases. Will that be updated?
Well.
It's on page 10 of the policy.
It's
There you go. Okay.
Never mind.
Yeah, and it's better done than the one I had, so I
Okay.
like this one better.
Okay.
So, and I think I say on there that I hope every office got that posted in their office.
We do.
Everybody does know that.
Commissioners, we will post this on our website as well. And then we will also be emailing this to all the office holders upon your approval.
Very good. Gary?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there are any other changes to the policy other than those two?
It was basically just an update of statute. There was, I think, one policy included in here, changed, and it was, if a single purchase is gonna be over $6,000, even if it's through a state contract or a sole source, that, they have to go before the county commission to seek approval. And that way it's documented on record that, A, the commission approved it, and it is through an approved vendor.
Thank you.
Yes, Kevin?
Does this allow for us to pay our jurors by credit card?
I guess,
By a debit card?
that I don't think so. That is
She
more.
names 3 places that you could be paid from, and that's not one of them, so that may be something you want to look at.
Well, I've been talking with Vicki about that and the methodology we're gonna use for the jurors. But the investment policy and the depository agreement allows for different methods of payment. So I don't know if it needs to be included in that, but I'll get with Amber and we'll.
That would be more along the lines of
Before-
our
Before
credit
they
card
approve it,
policy.
well, you've got method of payments, Part D.
Okay.
Right, and one of
What
those is
is-
the credit card.
again, I did
But
have
it's a
to
credit
remember-
card issued through First State Bank, which is not.
It is.
It is.
That, I'm saying that
Okay.
you should, I think you should put it forth, and,
For jurors specifically.
and, well, not so much specific and ambiguous enough, fuzzy enough, so that if the treasurer
Right.
decides to start making some payments to the poll workers or by, this is what they're doing now, rather than having bunches of checks issued, when they come in for jury duty, you give them a
Right.
credit card,
Right.
and then once they do that, then you pop their $10, is it, on their credit card, so that we don't have to send out checks for all these, and a lot of counties are just starting to do this. I don't wanna adopt a policy that will prohibit us from doing this. If you want the ability to do that, or for poll workers, you give the poll worker a card at the first year and say, every time you work the poll, we will make it, and then zap it on. If that becomes we're talking about
Right.
direct, but this, I think you ought to have one
Okay.
provision in there that
Alright.
allows that, in case
Yeah.
she decides to do it. You don't have to go back and redo all the process.
And we do have an exception area that talks
Right.
about the payment
Right.
of jurors.
Where are you, Amber?
I'm trying to find it, I don't remember what page it's on. But it's basically allowing us to process pettit jurors, poll workers,
Right.
through, with not having to use our requisition process. It's on page 11,
Right,
and
it's
it's
just under that
requisition
D.
exemptions, but it doesn't really specify how they're paid as much as how we process it in our system.
Right.
So if they were processed as requisitions, each check would require its own requisition,
And
which
I'm okay
requires
with-
5 approvals. So we did an exemption to
Right.
allow that to just basically go through our process.
I'm just asking, will she need flexibility just by putting that line in saying,
But
or
I'll-
credit cards issued for purpose of, that
Right.
word?
Well, it lists circumstantial purchases.
Right,
Okay.
and that's what I was gonna say, it doesn't really, this really talks about purchasing, where we're paying a poll worker or
It is a
a
whole
juror,
different
we're not
thing.
really purchasing anything from them as much as we're paying them for their service. So I don't know necessarily if that would fall under our purchasing policy as much as it is we're obligated by law to pay
As
them.
long as it's not gonna be, hold up.
Yeah, Gary?
Well, and of course, we do have office policies as well, and I don't necessarily think this is a purchasing policy, as Amber is saying, as much as it's an internal policy, because we already use a lot of these options. We just.
Correct.
This, juror card is a new idea that we're researching and we'll probably go to, and if we go ahead and move forward with it, then we'll come before the commission and make sure. But as of now, as far as the the fraud policy, the investment policy, the purchase policies all combine, I think, to cover methodologies used to make payments. I don't think it's something that needs to necessarily be in there, but if you want it in there, I'm okay with it.
In the treasurer's mind, then, the credit card situation is something we're testing or looking into?
Or I'm working with Vicki Weidel, we're in discussions about how it's gonna work, because we have to work out the details about how it's gonna come together with the jurors. And I've also been talking to Kevin's staff about the, election workers. And right now, it looks like direct deposit might be the option we go with. It's not gonna be a mandatory direct deposit because we don't have that. But, that's what we're looking at with that.
What about if we approve as you have it and then amend it at some time when we get these other factions ready?
Sure, and like I said, I don't know necessarily if it falls under our purchasing
Right,
guidelines, because we're
I-
talking about buying supplies and services, whereas we're obligated to pay these people. I think the method of payment that we choose, I don't think will really change our purchasing policy. But I did wanna say, as I looked through here, when I was checking the competitive bid line item for the prevailing wage rate, it does not state the $75,000 threshold, it just discusses.
Yeah, I didn't see that in there.
So I will make that change accordingly with the wording from the statutes.
Okay, so for clarification, on page 11, it says the approved methods of payment for the county are as follows. Payments, e-payments?
Again, these are paying for those purchases. So you can either use a vendor charge account, a credit card, a vendor credit card, or a First Aid Community Bank
If you
Visa.
needed something else, we'd have to come back to this.
Exactly.
And I think we can redress it if it comes, but again, I don't think it's gonna really fall under our purchasing.
So you're open now, right now, Commissioner, to an amendment to add the language on the, $75,000.
In this, motion second, you're saying?
You got a motion and a second, you're open for amendments, I would amend to what she just what she just said, not approve it and then let her change it in the future. You need to amend it to say, I make amendment to include the $75,000 provision on the prevailing wage, and that gives her the permission to put it in, and you still have adopted the policy.
And as clarification, the $75,000, I think it was that the state legislature passed that any expenditure up to $75,000 by the county does not require prevailing wage. And after the $75,000 threshold, then you have to have prevailing wage for that project. So that was, and that's for outside construction.
Correct.
So that's what we're talking about here. So, but that's a year-old law that we can do that.
Yep.
So, does your amendment,
So
your motion?
you're entertaining amendment for that purpose.
I amend my motion to include what he said.
The wording is 75 on, okay, we've got a second.
Second, include that? Okay, any other questions?
You vote on the amendment.
Okay. Vote on the amendment first?
Yes.
Okay, so who all agrees with the amendment? Aye? Aye. Okay.
Now you're on the underlying.
Now, and on the primary motion, who, have a motion second on that? All agree? Aye. Okay, thank you, man.
Commissioners?
Yes.
I might add that Amber did a terrific job in putting this together and researching state statutes, and it would have been released months ago, earlier than what it was today, but we were a little distracted by two previous audits earlier this year.
What have you been doing your spare time?
Not much.
Okay. Okay, next item, and are you the Cottrells? Okay, yes. We'll go back to that amendment, or agenda item. Come up the microphone, please, and start out with your name and, what you're here for. Just for our records.
Okay, hi, my name is Pam Cottrell, and I'm here representing a cemetery issue. I came in last week and talked to a few people at the courthouse, and I spoke with Linda, and she really wasn't sure if I would be able to get any help necessarily today, but she might be able to give me some direction. My mother passed away in Texas on March 19th, and I transferred her up here on March 25th for burial at Pendleton Cemetery in Doe Run. And my family has had plots there for years. I have several family members buried there, and my dad was buried there 4 years ago in 2015, and my baby brother was buried there in 1950. And my mom's wishes all her life was just, you know, to come back here. She was in Texas, but come back here where she, you know, grew up and be buried by her baby. Well, when the mortuary received her, I got a phone call saying that the overseer of the cemetery would not allow burial because of rock. And I was a little surprised by this because my dad was just buried there 4 years ago. And so we contacted the overseer of the cemetery, and she just, you know, said, absolutely, your mom cannot be buried there. And so I asked her if the gravedigger could probe it, you know, because my dad was just buried there 4 years ago, and she refused. She kept saying like my dad wasn't even buried there. Well, at first she said it had been a lot longer than that, and now she's saying he's not even buried there. And she also has, I guess, went to the courthouse and pulled my baby brother's death certificate, which is 70 years old, but it states Doe Run Cemetery versus Pendleton, which Doe Run Cemetery is across the street. But my family, even my dad all my life, just always referred to Pendleton, just, you know, Doe Run Cemetery. So I think that may be the confusion on the death certificate. And I've been to Channel 4 News with this. I don't know if anybody saw our interview, but Chris, the reporter, spoke with Betty as well. And he spoke with the overseer of the Doe Run Cemetery, and he confirmed that my baby brother is not buried in the Doe Run Cemetery, and he feels it's, you know, that he is where we say he is. There's a stone there, and, you know, all my family, you know, that are older, you know, was there when my baby brother was buried. So I've been fighting her for 6 months, waiting to get my mom proper burial. And there's a lawyer in Kansas City that's kind of been giving me some direction here, and she looked up, like, we contacted the Attorney General's office, the state board over endowed cemeteries, and they're not even registered as a cemetery with the state board or anything, so it's kind of like they run things on their own. So the church, I believe, from the deed, is technically the owner. I think I heard that St. Joe Lead Company gave that land to them years ago, and then they then went on to let, you know, different families mark their plots out there. So we have cement cylinders in the ground that, you know, has marked our plots, but she will not let my mom be buried there. I don't know if part of it's because, you know, my mom didn't live here for years, or if it's just a power, you know, it's kind of like a power struggle, I think, because she's just won't work with us at all. And anything she comes up with, and we try to compromise or get a resolution, she won't work with us. So I came here today to kind of tell you my story and to see if you could give me any, you know, direction or help in any way.
I have been on the phone and I talked to this funeral, and first of all, they're not gonna charge for any storage or anything.
Right, they have been so gracious.
Yeah, they're very helpful to me on the phone call. And they are working with the Lane Cemetery out of Elvins for a temporary burial site.
Right.
And know Helen Campbell and Mike Phelps on that are very great people, and they're all working together. Mine's a phone call. They are doing the work. I didn't.
Right. Yes, sir.
Mine's just a phone call. But they're working on that to get your mother a temporary burial site. Now, the funeral home tells me that it's the old Pendleton Cemetery, and that it may actually be full. They don't know that. They thought that might be the situation there.
Well, I don't believe so, because they've been doing other burials, and there's still a lot of land there. Plus, my mom's plot is already there between my dad and my baby brother. So even if they decide, you know, they don't want to do any more burials, as far as it being full, that plot has always been there. The Jacobs, my dad's side of the family, has just always saved that for my mom, knowing that she wanted to be buried by the baby.
I did ask if there's any animosity here, and they said that none has been voiced.
No, and she even said that on the interview. There's nothing she has against my mom. There's, you know, but she just, you know, she's very difficult to work with, I mean, very difficult.
Well, I even mentioned the possibility of cremation, and, was it your husband I talked to? I talked to a gentleman, I've also talked to the lawyer about it on the phone. And, he said, well, I don't know how she felt about cremation, but she did mention it once as a possibility. And that might ease the situation here. If your, parents or the baby's right there, she could be buried right on top of the baby with cremation. So that would be a possibility to look at.
Right.
And so there are all kinds of things, but temporary burial is being arranged now. As we
Yes,
speak.
sir, yes, sir.
So that's being done. The county has no authority over the private ownership of these lands, so we can't just go and say, you gotta do this.
Right.
But, we do that. But I will stay on top of this part of it and see that, like I say, I know Mike, I know Helen Campbell and the people at Funeral Home. So they're working for this solution. And I'm sorry that you've been through this.
Thank you, it's been very difficult,
I
cause
can
I was so close to my
almost
mom
imagine.
anyway, and that part has already been difficult, plus I've been dealing with this, so it's been real hard.
Okay, any of you guys have any questions?
Commissioner, I do.
Yes.
Ms. Cottrell, I offer sympathy to your situation as well. Do you have proof of ownership of the burial plot?
No, because nobody has deeds to that cemetery that's buried there. They just, I guess somehow years ago, you know, back, I mean, I believe it was even donated as a cemetery like back in the late 1800s. But the families were just, you know, given the option to mark their sections, and it was just always assumed, you know, that there would be, we've never had any problems with burials up until now.
The way I understood you, years ago, you went in and claimed the spot.
Yeah, and just marked it off, and each family even takes care of their section, so this overseer technically just marks the plots. She doesn't upkeep it, mow, I mean, any of that. The families take care of their own sections.
And I understand the overseer is not part of the church, so the church
No,
is
sir.
not tied into this. I don't want to give them a bad name on that.
Right.
The church is free of any of this.
Well, they technically own the land, so they could kind of help us if, you know, they wanted to step in, but the preacher, I know, doesn't want to get involved. And I'm not sure who the actual active trustees are right now. I was gonna try to find that out while I was here today too as well.
Other than helping with this temporary burial, is there
Right.
anything else I can do for you? Or?
No, that's it. Like I said, I wasn't sure, but I've been trying everything, so I thought it doesn't hurt to, you know, come here and present what's going on and see if you can help me in any way.
Well, the Lane Cemetery has been very gracious in offering it.
Everybody has been so gracious. I can't thank, you know, the funeral home enough. I mean, just everybody has really stood by us.
Again, we offer our sympathies. And
Thank you, I appreciate
hope it works
that.
out well, and at least your mother will be temporarily relieved of that.
Yes, and I'm thankful for that part too. That kind of gave me a little ease with this, knowing I could do a temporary burial and still try to see if we could get the issue resolved. So,
And again, the funeral home has been very helpful, and they're waiving all fees and costs and all that.
I know, I just can't thank everyone enough for what they've done, so. And thank you for giving me your time today. I appreciate it.
We'll hope it works out well.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
now, we have, this is the item we moved over to this agenda, and you want to talk about the MAC chief?
Yes, sir. Commissioners, I'd like to apply for another MAC Achievement Award. MAC Achievement Awards they recognize the innovative and creative spirit of Missouri County governments in finding new and effective ways of providing programs and services to its citizens. 2017, we applied for a MAC Achievement Award, recycling tax money to create a more, and we received a MAC Achievement Award. 2018, we applied, saving taxpayer dollars by volunteering, and we received a MAC Achievement. I would like your permission to apply for a 2019 MAC Achievement Award, saving taxpayer dollars by working with government agencies. And this deals with the Maple Street project, the Old County Road Bridge Department, recognizing our highway administrator, our barn superintendent, and the gentlemen, or the men down at the County Road and Bridge Department, and the money-saving ideas that we recognize. So with your permission, I would move that we apply for a 2019 MAC Achievement Award.
I move that we grant permission to apply for the award.
I'll second it.
All right, fantastic.
Any questions? I'll talk about it. The rule that DNR had on this particular case was, if you take out contaminated soil, you put in clean soil to replace it. Soil, it had to be soil. Where do you get that many acres of clean soil without stripping a farm of valuable resource? So the question was brought up, why not put in rock? Because this is a commercial property that will have buildings and parking lot and probably no lawn. So you don't want pristine soil there that will have to be hauled out for the building and the parking lot that's gonna be in there. So we just asked DNR and he said, well, no, the rule says you gotta put in soil. He kept pushing it, and finally they said, well, why? And he said, well, okay, here's the reasons, the thing about the cost of stripping off the farm, hauling it in. And then these guys found a source of free rock. Turns out that our quarries had all kinds of overburdened rock that was in their way. And they gave it to us if we'd haul it. They loaded it. We paid, I think we crossed the scales and paid them a small scale fee.
$5 off.
$5 per load. And that proved to the DNR how much rock we hauled, which we needed anyway. So it all worked out for the best because DNR changed the rule. The quarry got rid of a lot of overburden that they needed to start mining rock on. And we saved $500,000.
And I would like to add there, the commission also allowed us in the past couple of years to purchase some excavation equipment
Yeah.
that we was allowed
Good point.
to utilize for this project.
Because our ongoing upgrade of equipment,
Right.
we were able to do our own equipment removing. And now we learned that DNR is letting other people around the state use this modified rule, and they're saving money on it. So, because he kept pushing the edge of it, and asking the question, they've changed the rules, and it was helpful to everyone, and we really enjoyed the benefits of it.
The professional engineering firm estimated $604,000 for a superficial excavation project. When it was all said and done through these two gentlemen right here, they're employees at the Road and Bridge Department, the project came to around $52,000. So I want to recognize them, recognize the hard work that we all have. We'll see what happens.
Yes.
Come here in a few weeks.
Absolutely a valid request for an award on that, so, and I have a motion second, and all in favor, aye? Aye. All right, thank you. Next meeting will be Monday next week, that's the first Monday of this fourth term. So it'll be right here, now, it's a Monday meeting, so your agenda items must be in on Friday at 10 a.m. this week. So that's the notice on that. Other business, correspondence, I do have something. And this is written by me. I had the extreme pleasure of driving the Hildebrecht Road this last week. It was beautiful. Without question, an asset to our county. The only complaint I've had about it was citizens suggesting ways to preserve it, wanting to limit truck traffic. But the point is that the people out there are very proud of it. I've also driven roads in other counties. I've crossed out the counties that the ones I told you about recently, and they have absolutely nothing compared to ours. Admittedly, this is our newest and best, but it is a landmark. Please extend my thanks to the entire crew for their continued job well done in so many aspects of maintaining our county. Signed by me, and I appreciate it. Thank you. Any other correspondence? Public comments? Departmental reports?
I got one.
Okay, Dan.
A couple months ago, I was contacted by AT&T here locally as far as a memo. They requested a memorandum of understanding signed between AT&T and Francois County Emergency Management as far as access to their FirstNet program. If you're not familiar with FirstNet program is designed for first responders in the event of a disaster area where they take priority on their cell phone devices on the network. They had issues throughout the nation where these restoration companies were called in by first responders, but they couldn't communicate to the first responders that they were responding to the location. So they're looking for support as far as counties to allow those restoration companies access on the FirstNet platform. So instead of a memorandum of understanding, we decided to do a letter of support. I'll read that letter to you right now. To Kelly Albee, AT&T representative from Dan Duncan, St Francois County Emergency Management, regarding letter of support regarding FirstNet access for restoration companies dated October 1st, 2019. Disaster response and recovery efforts can be very challenging for first responders and contractors working in disaster response and recovery efforts. Reliable communication between first responders and contractors working to assist in disaster response and recovery efforts is key for all stakeholders. We support AT&T's efforts to establish reliable channels of communication by allowing qualified and responsible restoration contractors working in disaster response and recovery efforts to access your FirstNet platform. Regards, Dan Duncan, St Francois County Emergency Management Director. Again, this is just a letter of support for AT&T to allow those types of companies access their network. If another cellular company provider requests the same type of support, we'll obviously provide them with the same type of letter as well for accessing their network as well. But I just felt that you guys would like to know that we are working with local phone providers, because it's not just for whenever they respond to in another location for a disaster. If we sustain a disaster here in St Francois County, we're going to those outside resources as well. We obviously need to contact and be in communication with those companies as well. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that.
So will this letter be part of the minutes of this meeting? Can you copy them or have them?
Yes, please do.
I can.
The first memorandum of understanding from the company was pretty much, here we are, we'll take over, we'll send you a bill. And so this backed off and.
We spoke with Travis Elliott on that first one, and he was even kind of like, it's a little too much. So we communicated back with this week as far as drafting a letter of support for the AT&T regarding any and all certified restoration companies to be able to access their AT&T network. So,
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Kevin, do you have something?
Yes, I just wanted to introduce Senator Roy Blunt's representative, Leslie, is it Roney?
Rome.
Roan. Okay, she's here, and you can report back to the senator
All is well in St. Francis
that
County.
all except we've got a cemetery problem that he'd like to work on. No voters.
No. Okay, any other departmental reports? And welcome, Leslie. Okay, the next item on the agenda is.
Move that we adjourn. And I'd second the motion.
Okay, but I have this.
Don Knotts. That's what I see, he's got his bullet.
Okay. I see some finger pointing back there. Yeah, welcome, Charles.
From 1970.
All right. Thank you.